You did everything right. You ate the giant kale salad. You added the flax. You swallowed the fiber powder because somebody told you that more fiber is always better. And then, 30 minutes later, your stomach feels like it has been pumped full of air. You are cramping, distended, embarrassed, and wondering how a meal that looks so healthy can leave you looking 6 months pregnant. IBS commonly causes abdominal pain, bloating, and changes in bowel habits, and the gut can be unusually sensitive in people with IBS. And if that has happened to you, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not broken, you are not weak, and you are not imagining it. What many people call a healthy meal can be the exact wrong stimulus for a gut that is already irritated, oversensitive, and overreacting. IBS is a disorder of gut-brain interaction, meaning the bowel can be more sensitive and the muscles can behave differently than expected. This video is for educational purposes only. IBS symptoms can mimic serious conditions like Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, or colon cancer. If you have red flag symptoms like bloody stools, severe weight loss, or nighttime waking from pain, see a gastroenterologist immediately. Doctors are advised to look for warning signs such as rectal bleeding, unexplained weight loss, anemia, and other alarm features so they can rule out conditions that can look like IBS. Vita also notes that testing may be used to rule out colon cancer or inflammatory bowel disease when appropriate. Now here is the part most people never hear. For a lot of IBS sufferers, the problem is not that they need to push through with more rough fiber. The problem is that their gut is already in a state where that roughness becomes a trigger. Too much fiber at once can cause gas and bloating, and insoluble fiber is more likely to cause bloating and abdominal discomfort than soluble fiber. So when someone with an irritated gut is told to keep loading up on raw vegetables and fiber powder, it can backfire fast. That does not mean fiber is the enemy. It means fiber has to be matched to the biology of the person in front of you. Some guts tolerate it beautifully. Other guts react like a smoke alarm going off in a quiet room. IBS is not a moral failure, and it is not a character flaw. It is a real gut-brain condition with real sensitivity, real bloating, and real pain. IBS symptoms can vary from person to person, and bloating is a common symptom. Dietary changes help some people more than others. So the question is not, why am I failing the salad? The real question is, what is my gut trying to tell me about its current state? When the intestine is irritated and hypersensitive, even normal amounts of rough food can feel like an attack. That is why the same meal that leaves one person energized can leave another person in pain, swollen, and trapped in a cycle of fear around food. IBS is widely recognized as a gut-brain disorder, and increased sensitivity in the gut can amplify bloating and pain. In the next part, I am going to show you why this happens biologically, why raw salad can act less like nourishment and more like fuel for a distressed gut, and why the goal is not to punish your body with more roughage. The goal is to understand the environment you are feeding. Once you understand that, everything changes. Doctors may recommend changing diet and adding fiber slowly because different strategies help different people with IBS. Let us talk about what fiber actually is. Fiber is the part of plant food your body does not fully digest. That sounds healthy, and in the right context, it often is. But in people with IBS, the problem is not that fiber is bad. The problem is that certain fibers are more fermentable, more irritating, and more likely to create gas in a gut that is already on edge. That is why NIDDK notes that too much fiber at once can cause gas and bloating, and why some people do better with soluble fiber than with rougher insoluble fiber. Now here is the key biology. Bacteria are supposed to live mostly farther down the digestive tract, where they help break down leftover material. But when certain carbohydrates or fibers are not fully digested, they can become food for bacteria that break them down and produce gas. That process is called fermentation, and it is one of the reasons gas and bloating can happen after beans, cruciferous vegetables, fruit juices, and some high-fiber foods. In other words, the food may be healthy on paper, but if it reaches the wrong environment, it can become a gas factory. This is where SIBO enters the conversation. SIBO means small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, which is an abnormal increase in bacteria in the small intestine. In a normal setup, the small intestine is relatively low in bacteria compared with the colon. But when that balance shifts, fermentation can happen earlier than it should, and symptoms like bloating, abdominal discomfort, diarrhea, and excess gas can show up. Not every person with IBS has SIBO, but for some people, it is part of the picture that needs medical evaluation. And this is why the advice to just eat a giant raw salad can backfire so hard. Raw cruciferous vegetables and certain high-fiber foods are well known to increase gas in some people, especially when the gut is already reactive. The issue is not a lack of willpower. It is that the meal is delivering a large fermentable load into a system that may already be struggling to move things along smoothly. NIDA specifically notes that some vegetables, including broccoli, cauliflower, collard greens, and kale, can worsen gas symptoms, and that some people have more gas when they consume too much fiber. Think of it like this. If the gut is the kitchen, and the bacteria are the workers, then raw, rough, highly fermentable fiber can be like dumping a whole crate of food into a room that is already overcrowded. The result is not calm digestion. It is pressure, fermentation, and expansion. That pressure builds gas, and then the bloating starts. For someone with IBS, that bloating can arrive fast, feel intense, and completely hijack the rest of the day. IBS commonly involves abdominal pain and bloating, and gas-producing carbohydrates can worsen symptoms in susceptible people. So the real lesson is not, stop eating anything plant-based. The lesson is that your gut may need a gentler entry point. Cooked vegetables are often easier to tolerate because heat softens the plant structure and reduces the mechanical burden on the bowel. Many IBS plans also use a low FODMAP approach for a period of time, because these hard-to-digest carbohydrates can reduce gas in some people. This is not about fear. It is about matching the food to the biology of the gut in front of you. NIDA notes that some people with IBS benefit from low FODMAP eating, and that adding fiber slowly can help prevent gas and bloating. Now we come to the part that explains why the bloating feels so violent. It is not just the amount of gas. It is how the gut senses that gas. In IBS, many people have visceral hypersensitivity, which means the nerves in the gut can register normal stretching as pain, pressure, or urgent discomfort. So a little bit of expansion can feel like a lot. Visceral hypersensitivity is a recognized feature in IBS and can help explain abdominal pain, bloating, and discomfort. Think about a balloon inside a narrow tube. As gas builds, pressure rises, and the wall stretches. In a healthy system, that stretch is handled efficiently and often barely noticed. But in a hypersensitive gut, that same stretch is interpreted as threat. The signal becomes louder than the problem itself. Mayo Clinic notes that bloating and distension can also involve abnormal reflexes controlling how gas is cleared and how the abdomen responds to pressure. This is why people say, "I only ate a little bit, but I look huge." The gas may be modest, yet the body's response is amplified. The gut wall stretches, the nerves fire more intensely, the brain gets a stronger alarm signal, and the person feels cramping, fullness, and that terrible sense that the abdomen has suddenly taken on a life of its own. IBS is a gut-brain interaction disorder, and pain plus bloating are common symptoms. Heightened perception of intestinal stretch can drive symptoms out of proportion to the actual amount of gas. That is the dreaded food baby phenomenon. It is not vanity. It is physiology. The abdomen can visibly protrude when gas and other contents are trapped and the body's reflexes react poorly to that pressure. Some people also have an abnormal viscerosomatic reflex, meaning the diaphragm and abdominal wall do not coordinate properly, so the belly pushes outward even more. Mayo Clinic describes bloating and distension as involving gas clearance and abdominal wall mechanics in some patients. Now layer raw salad on top of that. Raw kale, broccoli, and other tough fibers are not just bulky. They can be harder to break down and more likely to create gas in sensitive people. So the person with IBS is not just dealing with stretch. They are repeatedly adding the very material that can fuel pressure and fermentation. That is why the salad can feel like the match that keeps relighting the fire. Nida specifically notes that some vegetables, including broccoli, cauliflower, collard greens, and kale, can worsen gas symptoms in some people. And the pain is not in your head. The pain is in your nervous system. When the bowel wall is stretched, inflamed, or irritated, the nerves can become extra reactive, and the brain receives a stronger pain message. That is why someone can feel severe cramping, burning pressure, or sharp spasms from what other people would describe as a normal meal. IBS pain and bloating are legitimate symptoms, and heightened visceral sensitivity is one reason symptoms may be intense even when the visible distension seems small. So when people tell you, just eat more fiber, they are ignoring the difference between a healthy, flexible gut and a hypersensitive one. In a reactive gut, raw roughage can become a mechanical irritant and a fermentation trigger at the same time. That is why the goal is not to force more and more fiber into the system. The goal is to calm the system first, then rebuild tolerance from a lower pressure starting point. Nida notes that fiber should often be increased slowly and that some people with IBS do better with soluble fiber than with rougher insoluble fiber. So what do you do instead of forcing a raw salad into a gut that is already screaming for relief? You calm the environment first. That usually means stepping away from the idea that more rough fiber is always better, and shifting toward a gentler pattern. Cooked vegetables, smaller portions, and a slower, more individualized approach to fiber. Nida advises that adding fiber slowly may help prevent gas and bloating, and Nice notes that some people with IBS may benefit from adjusting high-fiber foods according to their symptoms. That is not a retreat. That is strategy. When the gut is hypersensitive, the goal is to reduce the volume of things that ferment too fast or scratch too hard. Then rebuild tolerance from a lower pressure starting point. The AGA describes the low FODMAP diet as the most evidence-based diet intervention for IBS, and it is meant to be done in phases, not permanently stripped down forever. This is also where the gut lining matters. When someone is bloated, cramping, and reactive, the last thing we want is a diet that keeps hammering the system with more and more fermentation. We want the terrain to become less inflamed, less reactive, and easier to digest. That may include working with a gastroenterologist and, when appropriate, a dietitian who understands IBS so the plan fits your symptoms instead of fighting them. NICE recommends symptom-guided dietary adjustment, and AGA emphasizes individualized IBS diet care rather than one-size-fits-all rules. And this is where a microbiome and gut lining support protocol can fit in as a lifestyle adjunct. Not a replacement for medical care. Not a miracle. But for some people, a thoughtfully designed formula such as Gut Vita may be used alongside diet changes as part of a broader environment support strategy, especially when the focus is on soothing the gut rather than overwhelming it with harsh roughage. Always bring any supplement plan back to your gastroenterologist, especially if you are already on medication or under evaluation. Dietary changes should complement, not replace, medical assessment, because IBS symptoms can overlap with other conditions and individualized care is recommended. The big idea is simple. Stop trying to scrub an inflamed, overreactive gut with a giant bowl of raw fiber. Feed the system what it can actually handle. Reduce the mechanical burden. Reduce the fermentation load. Support the environment. That is how you move from constant flare-ups to a body that can finally exhale. NIDA and NICE both support symptom-guided dietary modification in IBS, including careful fiber adjustment and identifying trigger foods. Always consult your gastroenterologist before making major diet changes or adding any supplement, especially if you have severe pain, blood in the stool, unexplained weight loss, or symptoms that wake you from sleep. Those alarm features need medical evaluation because they can point to conditions other than IBS. Here is the truth I want you to leave with tonight. Your gut is not failing because you did not eat enough salad. In many people with IBS, the problem is not a lack of discipline. It is a gut that is overly reactive, easily bloated, and asking for a gentler strategy. IBS is often a long-term condition that needs individualized management, not one-size-fits-all advice. So stop punishing your gut with giant bowls of raw roughage just because somebody called it healthy. Listen to what your body is telling you. Reduce the pressure. Reduce the fermentation load. Soothe the system first. That is how you start to rebuild trust with food, one calmer meal at a time. NIDA notes that too much fiber at once can cause gas and bloating, and that adding fiber slowly may help people with IBS tolerate it better. If you are ready for a gentler microbiome and gut lining support blueprint, check the link in the description for Gut Vita. Think of it as a lifestyle adjunct, not a replacement for medical care, and not a shortcut. The real win is creating an environment where your gut can calm down, digest more comfortably, and stop reacting like every meal is an emergency. IBS care is individualized, and diet changes are used alongside medical evaluation and treatment rather than replacing it. And one last reminder. This video is for educational purposes only. IBS symptoms can mimic serious conditions like Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, or colon cancer. If you have red flag symptoms like bloody stools, severe weight loss, or nighttime waking from pain, see a gastroenterologist immediately. Your symptoms deserve real evaluation, real compassion, and a plan built around your body, not against it. NICE advises that red flag symptoms should prompt further investigation or referral, and NIDDK notes that testing may be used to rule out other conditions when needed.